his early formative years, he was not among the prominent and very visible members whom many could have predicted as successor to President Sata. The rise to power of Edgar Lungu is a story most people may love to hear. Today, many are wondering how it all happened and who Edgar Lungu is. Edgar Chagwa Lungu was born on 11th November 1956 at Ndola Central Hospital. He grew up on the Core Belt in Kitwe's Chimwemwe Township. Edgar did his secondary school at Mukuba before proceeding to the University of Zambia, where he did his law degree. He graduated as one of the best law students from UNZA on October 17, 1981, and later proceeded to Law Practice Institute in 1982, where he got...
Hello, good afternoon. You're tuned in to Millennium TV, and we continue mourning the former president, Edgar Chagwa Lungu, as the national mourning was extended by 9 days. And, you know, today we were definitely expecting something big to happen in Zambia. But, of course, unfortunately, there was a press briefing that was held by the family, a representative, that is Makebi Zulu. So obviously we're here to give you an update in relation to what has just happened just a few moments ago. And thank you so much for finding time to tune in so that we can get to update you in relation to what is happening. My name is Ruben Mwanza, and I'm with my colleague, Lovisa. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Ruben. How are you doing?
I'm good, thanks. How are you doing?
I'm all right. I can say I'm all right. Yeah. Just...
You sound like you're doubting.
No, I'm okay. Just sad developments, happening. I think that's why you and I are here today, this afternoon, to obviously talk about, what is obtaining on ground with regards President Lungu's burial. An issue, obviously, that has been dragging as we've been waiting for government and the family to reach an agreement. And we were told just a few days ago that they had reached a consensus, but we are back to square one. If you ask me, we're back to square one.
I feel like there's more consensus to be reached on this issue because just moments ago we saw Makebi Zulu, who is the Lungu family representative, saying that the body may not come in today into Zambia. So this simply tells us that he's not even sure as well when, because according to his words, he said he hopes, and the family hopes that someday the body might be repatriated to Zambia.
I mean, I don't know how you interpret the word someday, because I think that's what the emphasis was, someday, meaning it could be any day, but unless they decide to bring the body to Zambia.
My interpretation of that statement is he's simply telling us he's not sure, and the family is not sure when the body will be repatriated back to Zambia. And I feel like it may not be today, it may not be tomorrow, it may not be this week, maybe next week, because obviously if it were this week, I'm sure I was going to mention the day to say maybe tomorrow or Friday. Yeah. But looking at how he came out, it simply shows to say that there's a little bit of uncertainty when it comes to the repatriation of former President Edgar Chagwa Lungu. Right. We were very much geared to receive the body today, and I'm sure that many other media houses out there were ready, to cover the repatriation of the remains of...
We were also ready.
Very much
just
geared.
Unfortunate that not all the media houses were cleared to actually cover, the arrival of the president's body and remains in Zambia.
Indeed. And you know what, there's a lot of talk when it comes to restrictions that have been held up when it comes to who should cover the repatriation of ECL. Some people are saying it wasn't the same case when former President Levi Patrick Mwanawasa died and his body was repatriated to Zambia. Almost every media house was covering it. But
I think every media house deserves a stake at the table. I think every media house deserved to be there just to cover the body, to cover the arrival of President Lungu's body and remains in the country at Kenneth Kaunda International Airport. But I think from what we've heard from Makebi Zulu as well, I think he says that there were security concerns that the government raised, and that is why there were restrictions as to who was going to go to the airport. And also, I think there was supposed to be some sort of a service, if I'm not mistaken, but there was supposed to be an event taking place upon the arrival of the body, and this is what their family hasn't agreed to.
Exactly.
Yeah. But maybe
that information wasn't communicated to the family, according to Makebi Zulu. He said even, the security concerns were not clear, as in the government didn't come out clear to say the concerns are this and that and that. So obviously the family wasn't sure of the concerns that the government was raising. And also the church service, that was announced to say there'll be a church service immediately the body arrives in Zambia. Proper communication wasn't done with the family. So in short, there was no consensus on that.
Right. Maybe before Ruben and I get to analyze this further, let us listen to what Makebi Zulu, who's a family spokesperson for the Lungu's family, had to say with the blessing of President Edgar Lungu's elder sister.
Ninevo Betha Lungu. Ninevo nkashia kwa Edgar Chagwa Lungu. Chagwa Lungu emwaicho wandi uko nka ine panuma. Nomba ndefu ayokulanda kuchalo cha Zambia uko ati mumfwe ifyo ndelanda munivele maningi vamene vunufunola vila. Nifuna kulavila kuti uyu mubiri wa Chagwa wamene utudoselana pali zino ntawi taoneka monga seo lomba tawika mumanja ya mwine Mulungu ni ya kuti azile viti kuti tichite pali zino ntawi tufuna tinkale pasi tikambilane monga banja tizive viti kuti tichite osati seo te banja tuodoselana na boma tifuna kuti tinkale pamozi tike maganizo pamozi lomba tikunga kuva kuti mailo statement ya chinja lomba seo te babanja titolepo chinji so pola vila vonse hivyo. That's why Makebi Zulu nievunu pasa mpamvu neo ne sister wao kuti atilavilile ku ziko la Zambia viti kuti vikonkepo vitufuna kuti tichite. Nineo nuwapa mpamvu wa Makebi ozitolera lini mpamvu mubeka bene
fellow countrymen and women, brothers, sisters, and everyone who's listening in or indeed watching us. This is a statement for and on behalf of the Lungu family relating to the burial and funeral of the late President Edgar Chagwa Lungu. As the public may be aware, we had engaged government on the arrangements relating to the burial of the late 6th Republican President of the Republic of Zambia, President Edgar Chagwa Lungu. Following a joint briefing between family and government, we came to an agreed position that the mortal remains of President Edgar Chagwa Lungu would be repatriated today, the 18th of June, 2025. It was agreed, among other things, that the body would at all times lay in state at the official residence of the deceased in Chifwema. It was further agreed that parties would jointly make decisions upon consultation. However, the family has noted with regret that there have been attempts to subvert the spirit of the agreement that the family and the government got into by engagement into the following on the part of the government. On the 16th of June 2025, a statement to the public was released by Road Development Agency stating that they would be carrying out repair works of the road from Crossroads 7 kilometers onwards. As the public may know, this is a road that leads to Chifwema, the official residence of the former president. It is also part of the program and agreement that at all times the body would be moving from Chifwema to Mulungushi Conference Center for purposes of body viewing, the state funeral, as well as the burial service on the 23rd. However, the notice from RDA put it across that the road would be under maintenance. When this was brought to our attention, we advised the Secretary to the Cabinet that we weren't comfortable with these works as they tended to go against the agreement that we had. When this was brought to their attention, the said works were suspended until further notice. However, on the 17th of June 2025, the Secretary to the Cabinet issued a statement restricting people from receiving or at least witnessing the arrival of the remains of the former president. This notice was issued without consultation with the family, and further, no opportunity whatsoever was given to the family to indicate whom they wished to invite, if at all the attendance was by invitation, nor were they given any chance to say anything as regards the said invitation. When the Secretary to the Cabinet was engaged, he only stated that there were security concerns, which concerns still have not been stated to the family. Following that statement, the next thing was that there was a program for the arrival of the body at Kenneth Kaunda International Airport. This program suggested that upon arrival at Kenneth Kaunda International Airport, the body would be taken to a designated place for a church service, and thereafter it would be received by President Hakainde Hichilema at the airport. This position was not an agreed position with the family, and the program was made without consultation with the family. When this matter was made known to the Secretary to the Cabinet, he stated that the same was released in error and was a draft, and as such should not have been released. Before long, yet another statement, which they termed a combined program, was released, which essentially contained the same, but further went to suggest that on Thursday, the 19th of June 2025, President Hakainde Hichilema would lead the body viewing at Mulungushi International Conference Center. This program as well was arrived at without consultation with the family. For this reason and many more, the family finds it very difficult to believe that the government will stick to their end of the agreement, and have resolved, sadly so, that the mortal remains of President Edgar Chagwa Lungu will not return home today. It is our hope that someday his remains will be repatriated back home and buried. I thank you.
Right, that is family representative. Family, Makebe, giving us an update of the family. And of course, with the blessings of the older sister, it makes me so sad, Ruben, that we are still, even after an extension of the mourning period by 9 days, we're still discussing President Lungu's body not returning to Zambia, even as of today when the body was supposed to be repatriated back home. And this is because of some of the agreements that were made with the family by the representatives of government, and the family still feels that they have been an abrogation in the agreements.
Of course, just like Makebe said, there are certain decisions that were, not jointly made between the government and the family. So obviously, that's the reason why maybe we are seeing this delay of the remains of Edgar Chagwa Lungu coming into Zambia. But of course, everyone's hope in Zambia is that, the remains of Edgar Chagwa Lungu can come into Zambia so that, the processions can go on peacefully and he's laid to rest as accordingly. So we're just hoping that it'll be any time soon, and we're hoping that, another consensus, just like you said, we're back at square one. We're hoping that another consensus will be reached and everything will be done in peace.
Yeah, that is what we're hoping for. I don't know what the take of the people is. I've seen some comments, some people saying that they should actually, people are saying they're tired now. And if we're being honest, I think this issue has been dragging for some time, and it is only right that people would feel the way they're feeling right now, in a moment that we're all anticipating and very expectant that President Lungu's body will be arriving in the country today at 14 hours, and only to be told that there's been changes because the government has abrogated some of the agreements that they had made with the family prior to today's arrangements to repatriate his body. It makes sad reading, and
Indeed.
you know, I don't think this is what we expected.
Personally, I didn't expect this, especially when it was announced that they had reached a consensus. I was like, okay, now everything will be done peacefully, and the former president will be put to rest as accordingly. But looking at the new developments, I feel like there's a lot of work to be done when it comes to negotiations, you know, and resolutions between the family and the government of the Republic of Zambia. But I'm just hoping that everything will be done, you know, in peace, and we'll get to lay the former president to rest as it is expected. You know, it's the first time I'm seeing this happening.
Right.
We've seen a lot of former heads of states being put to rest. You know, we saw former President Levi Patrick Manawasa. His body was repatriated back from, should be France. And it was done peacefully.
I think President Sata as well.
President Sata as well, you know. So I'm just hoping that, you know, all the confusion, all the uncertainty will be cleared off, and we'll be getting back to normal and get to put our former Republican President, Edgar Lungu, to rest.
There's some points, sorry to cut you short, Ruben. There's some points I think that Makebi Zulu raises in his address, and he's talking about how the government has, you know, has actually come to, what's the word I'm looking for? How government has decided that President Hakainde Hichilema should be at the memorials, at the service of the late president, and this is something that the family has not agreed to, and I think that is one thing that Makebi Zulu raises in his update to say the family doesn't agree that President Hakainde Hichilema should be a part of the memorial service of the late president. And we were told earlier that this was one of his wishes, that President Hakainde Hichilema shouldn't come near the body of President Lungu. There's been an argument, I think, in Parliament. The Vice President even called it treason not to allow the President to be part of a state funeral.
But then again, you know, I'm looking at it from this point of view where Makebi Zulu made it clear to say those are the instructions that were left by the former president to say the incumbent president Hakainde Hichilema shouldn't be close to the remains of you know, former President Edgar Lungu. But there are some developments that were made to say the president will lead the body viewing. You know, so obviously the family is against that development, and they're saying it wasn't communicated to them, but they had communicated to the government to say President HH shouldn't be near the body of ECL. So it was to their surprise that it was announced back in Zambia to say the president will lead the body viewing. So obviously they are very much against that, and they want to keep the wishes of Mr. Lungu alive, even if he is gone.
One of the issues again that came up, I think, on the dates that President Lungu's body was to be repatriated, which is today, I think there was some road maintenance activities that were supposed to be taking place on the Leopards Hill Road, 7 kilometers straight, and this is the main road that leads to Chifwema, the residence of the former head of state. And I think this is one of the concerns that the family also had. You know, I actually saw this debate on social media, I think the day before yesterday, but I did not understand what people were talking about. Now, it was only this morning when I think we were having a discussion earlier today, that's when I understood. I'm like, oh, this is what actually, you know, was being discussed on social media with regards, you know, maintenance taking place on Leopards Hill Road. And I think this is what the family, or this is a concern that the family also raised. And they had extended, I think, I mean, works on that road were halted until further notice. But today we have new revelations from Makebi Zulu, and it makes me so sad. I think all of us were really looking forward to today and looking forward to burying the late president on Monday. But one key word, like I said earlier, is we're hopeful, or we're hoping that someday,
just like Makebi said.
Yes, that's what he said as he was ending his briefing. He says, we're hoping that someday President Lungu's remains will be repatriated to Zambia. So my question still remains, what does he mean by someday? Because someday seems like there's no certainty there. It could be next year. It could be 2 months from now. It could be 3 months from now. It could be any day.
Yeah.
But with where we are right now, are we expecting government and the family to, sit down again and start having discussions with regards the repatriation of President Lungu's body to Zambia? Or are we expecting the government to also step aside and just let the family do what they want to do? From the sister's words, she says, right now, we're leaving everything in God's hands. So at which point are we at right now?
Well, personally, I feel like there should be more negotiations that should be done. One thing that we should know is that ECL is a former head of state, and there's no way the government can just pull out from this, procession. Obviously, they need to be part of it because he's a former head of state. He's not just an ordinary Zambian. He is one person that ruled this country for 7 years. And, speaking of the maintenance works that you mentioned, Lovisa, I feel like those maintenance works could be put on hold, not until, the processions are done. I don't think it's an emergency to work on the road, as compared to having the body being repatriated to Zambia.
The question Zambians have right now, I think the works have been put on hold until further notice. But the question that has risen is why now, when there's been these demands from the family to have President Lungu's body lie in state at his Chifuema residence. So why say they're going to be, there's going to be maintenance on that road in this period?
Well, maybe that is the time that they had put up to say they're going to work on the roads. But just like I said, maintenance works on the roads.
The motive is right, but the timing is wrong.
The timing is wrong. I don't think it's an emergency to work on the roads. It's very important to work on the roads.
Those roads have been, that particular road has been in a very, not really bad state per se, but it's not quite in its a good form, but I think it's not an emergency, like you've said. It's not an emergency, so I think these roads, these works can even, take off next month or the other month. We're not going towards the rain season anytime soon. We still have a few months before the rain season, so it's not an emergency. But the question that has risen, and I think these were the concerns of the family, why now, when the family demands that President Lungu's body should lay in state at his Chifuema residence, and there was going to be a lot of activity on this road because every morning they were going to be getting his body from the Chifuema residence to Mulungushi for body viewing up until the day of his burial.
And back to Chifuema.
And back to Chifuema, yes.
So in case you've got any comments or concerns that you would love to make, you can go to our Facebook page, Millennium TV Zambia, and you can drop them right there as we are, seeing some of them coming through on the page. But of course, it's every Zambian's wish. Maybe
we can also open our phone line. Just we're not here for too long, but we can get the people's views and just hear what the concerns and the views of the people are after this development this afternoon. The number that will be displaying on your screen, it is what you'll be using to call us on. It is 0770813728. That is the number that you'll be using to call us and just be part of the conversation this afternoon. Tell us what your views are and what your take is on this sudden development.
Indeed. So you can come through, and you can also, in case you're not able to call, you can still drop your comments, like I said, on our Facebook page, and we'll view them and obviously get to present them live on this presentation. We've had a few comments
coming in on our screen, and I'm sure those that are sending in their comments on Facebook are able to see that their comments are also, coming through on the screen. I almost call you David.
And my older brother is David, so it's okay. You can call me David.
Right. Yeah, Ruben. I'm hoping that we'll hear an update from government as well. Before the end of the day, so that we also know what government's position is on what we've just been informed by the family of the late president. The family has got the right, yes, but I think one of the issues I feel also that, the family has raised is that of the restrictions at the airport. The tight security. I think the questions going through the heads of family members right now was, why is there tight security at the airport? Where do they want to take the body? Do they want to take over the body upon reaching, the airport? Or is the family still going to be in charge of President Lungu's body as their demands. In the last, I think from the time that were updated, those were the agreements by the family and government officials that were present in South Africa.
There's a briefing that I was watching last evening by the acting president of PF, Given Lovinda, where he said to say whoever is going to be close to the body, as in from the government, will be met with total resistance. You know, so I don't really know what that means. And also, one thing that I picked out from Makebi Zulu's speech, or rather briefing, is that the family is not clear what sort of security concerns they are. You know, at least maybe if they had made it clear to the public that way, obviously, we were going to be clear about it and maybe just follow suit in relation to the concerns of the government.
Right.
Yeah.
We have some comments pouring in. I mean, that is not a comment, actually. That I think that should be a tweet or post from Dinginda Bajona Buyoya. Maybe you might help me read it, Ruben.
Okay. So it says the family of former President Edgar Lungu has resolved that the remains of the former president will not be, repatriated today because they do not trust. Obviously, they do not trust the government will respect their wishes. So family comes first, isn't it? Yeah. Family comes first. So, but again, President Edgar Lungu was a statesman. So I feel like there should be a consensus that should be reached on this one here. And we're just hoping that there won't be another extension of national mourning. Looking at how things are happening right now, this might drag for some days. And who knows, maybe we might expect the government to extend the national mourning. But the sentiments from the people out there, some of the people are saying that they are tired. And it's like, some of their lives have been put on hold and they just have to move on with life.
Right.
Yeah.
There's another post, I think, from Dinginda Jona Buyoya. You might want to read it. Oh, that is actually not, that is Peggy Mukuka.
Okay, so Peggy Mukuka says, where are we? Where were we? Time the former president needed help for health. Why not,
why now? He can't. Right. Anyways, I want to state something, Ruben. And the thing is, I understand the position of the family. If you ask me, I think I've been very, for me, my positioning, I understand the family and where the family is coming from and why the family has been so, keen on, just making sure that the wishes of their father, are respected. We've seen, we know where we're coming from. I think everything is in public domain. Much as the state, has got the right at this point to also take over the funeral. I understand the positioning of the family because we know what the relationship was between the former head of state and the current head of state. And we saw the court sessions of, the children to the former head of state, the wife to the former head of state. There was another video where the former head of state escorted his wife to, I think, the Drug Enforcement Commission, where with some suspected UPND cadres were hailing insults at the former head of state. There was police presence actually at the DEC, heavy police presence, and nothing was done. People were insulting the former head of state. I remember, I think we even hosted Mr. Anderson Banda, who's Lusaka Province chairman for the UPND, and he talked about that behavior and, asked that whoever was doing that from the UPND was on their own and warned his youths not to engage in such. And much as the president had returned to active politics, he also warned that he is a former head of state and an elderly in society, and we needed to respect him in that regard. I think President Lungu also spoke about that in one of his videos before he traveled to South Africa, even before his passing. And you can see that there was a lot of mounting, I don't even know what word to describe, to use to describe, the type of relationship that existed between the members of the Patriotic Front and the UPND. And I think we can now see that now President Lungu is late.
Indeed. And you know what, for me, I feel like if a reconciliation was done before President ECL died, I'm sure all of this could have been avoided.
We wouldn't be here today.
Indeed, but we are here simply because maybe there was no reconciliation done, and this should be a wake-up call, you know, especially if you have some political rivalry with someone. I feel like it's about time that you get to, you know, reconcile with that person, because you might never know what will happen tomorrow.
Right.
I believe both of them never saw this coming happen. Maybe they were like, okay, we might, you know, reconcile later in future, but our plans are not God's plans at the end of the day. So we continue reading out some comments that are coming through. There was one that came in from Forbes Chips, and it said, government is government. Let the drama be put to rest. There is no one above the law. That was
if you ask me, comment. I feel like the Lungu family doesn't need the rest of the people in Zambia to actually put, you know, President Lungu to rest. I think they might have enough finances to actually give him a befitting burial, even without the state. You know what I mean? So only
but
that.
Then again, he was the former head of state.
Exactly, I do know that. But for some time now, they've been asking. There was requests that, you know, this should be held privately. President Lungu wanted, you know, him to be honored privately, even after he died. And even the same way he left for South Africa privately is the same way they wanted to handle this funeral privately. So there's been these concerns, and I'm sure we all know that the Lungu family can afford to give their father a befitting burial. Maybe just because every Zambian, I think, at this point would want to be a part of President Lungu's, you know, send-off. And just his going to Mlungushi to pay their last respects. The people of Zambia would want to be accorded that opportunity. Indeed.
Let's continue reading out some comments, Lovisa.
Right. Well, I'm unable to see properly because I've got issues with my sight. I'm unable to see properly because I've got issues with my sight. But we have messages coming through, and thank you to everyone that is actually sending through their messages. Remember that our phone line is also open. It is 0770813728. That is the number that you'll be dialing to be part of the conversation this afternoon. And just tell us what your comments are this afternoon, and tell us what your views are on the current development that President Lungu's remains will not be repatriated to Zambia as of today, 14 hours, 18th June 2025. One of the issues, something that we also want to mention in passing, Ruben, is that today actually we're also celebrating the 14th anniversary in honor of the late president's the second Republican president's Dr. Frederick Jacob Titus Chiluba. Today we celebrate 14 years of you know, since he passed on. It's been 14 years. I was thinking about it yesterday, and I'm thinking 14 years is actually not a very long time. You know, growing up, I was thinking maybe President Chiluba died a very long time ago. But looking at where I am now and counting back, it isn't actually a very long time.
Indeed, but it still feels like yesterday for me, because I would tell you that you know, former President FTJ Chiluba.
It's actually FJT.
FJT Chiluba.
Yeah, so the son corrected me yesterday. It's not FTJ. It is Frederick Jacob Titus Chiluba. So it's FJT.
Yeah, so he passed on in, is it 2011?
2011, yes.
Yes. And today we're actually, you know, streaming live his memorial service right here on Millennium TV. I must say that there are some people that can't even remember that today was his, you know, memorial service day, because obviously due to the fact that today we were expecting the body of ECL, so it was more like the concentration was so much on ECL. But of course, let's get to read out more comments that are coming through here. This one says, it is indeed sad news. Reports from multiple sources, including Zinhua, Voice of Nigeria, and Reuters, confirm that former Zambian President Edgar Chagwa Lungu, obviously, his body is not coming into Zambia. That is from Chimbwe Harene. So I was talking about FJT Chiluba, you know. Okay, so we've got more comments. No, this is comedy, Washon Tembo. This is a serious and sad time for Zambians. We don't need this cheap act of crying for comedy.
I think this comment came in. I think this comment came in when President Chon Tembo cried hysterically when he was announcing and confirming the death of the 6th Republican president of Zambia. If you ask me, I think President Sean Tembo outcried himself. You saw the video,
I saw the video. He even failed to, announce the death of ECL.
I must make mention that I think I don't watch that video. Like every time I hear that video, I always laugh. I'm not supposed to, because I think Mr. Sean Tembo was crying out of, the pain of receiving the news that President Lungu had died. But I would agree, to some extent, I think it was, he overcried.
You think so? Maybe he was very close to ECL, so
he worked closely with him. He worked closely with him before he went to South Africa, and I think they were also still in contact even when he was in South Africa.
Right.
But that crying though, that was too much.
But Lovisa, people mourn differently. There are certain people.
I wouldn't expect a man to cry the way Mr. Tembo cried. Sean Tembo outcried himself, and I'll stand on that.
I wish you saw how I cried when I lost my dad.
Oh, you were screaming as well?
Like, not really screaming.
Exactly.
But every time his memories came to my thoughts, I was like, okay, so this man is normal.
But you
need to cry. You need to cry as a man.
Exactly, that's what I'm saying. You need to cry. I'm not disputing that fact. You need to cry as a man. There's a way men cry.
Yes.
There's a way women cry.
Yes.
Women will throw themselves. I think there's one that I love about Charity from the Patriotic Front. But Charity can cry, and she makes sure she cries. You saw when she went to the Secretariat House, she was just being the Charity, and she was, I think, because she's loved by Lungu. Every funeral she's attended, she hasn't forgotten to mention the name of President Lungu.
But the comments that she was making raised a lot of dust.
She's a dramatic woman.
Yeah.
She's a very dramatic woman.
The comments that she made actually raised a lot of dust, and she was comparing ECL's funeral to she was comparing how this funeral has been treated according to her. She said, people from the Lungu family are very much respectful people as compared to, from my Patriotic, and those were her words, not mine. So,
and actually a family of, a member of the family, Dr. Christine Kaseba's sister, also responded to those sentiments, and she said they should leave President Sata out of Lungu's funeral. These are totally two different funerals. Anyways, moving on from President Sean Tembo, but yeah, that crying, very dramatic, if you ask me. I agree with everyone that says it was being dramatic. But just an update. President Lungu died on the 5th of June this month of 2025 in South Africa after he underwent surgery from the information that we were given after his demise. He died in the early hours of 5th June 2025, around 6 hours. And from then we were expecting that President Lungu's body would return to Zambia, but thereafter it was met, the arrangements for his funeral were met with demands from the family, and which they state were some of the wishes by the former head of state, looking at the relationship that he shared with his with the incumbent President Hakainde Hichilema. And thereafter we saw that the family and the government reached a consensus, which after some days as well, we are back to square one, because the family says that the government hasn't lived up to its promises and the agreements that they made with the families. Like the government also here, we're also planning other things without informing the family. So we are back to square one. We're told that someday, hopefully, President Lungu's body remains will be repatriated back to Zambia, but we don't know when that someday will be.
I'm just hoping it to be anytime soon, because obviously there's a lot of talk going on, especially on international media. There's one comment, actually post that I saw on BBC, where they said finally peace has been restored in Zambia. And the processions will go on very well. But I don't know what comment they'll make this time around. But like I said, I'm just hoping that this will be anytime soon, Larissa, because some people out there, in the public, are saying the wishes of the family are a little bit too much.
I think the family at this point, Ruben, if you ask me, the family is only trying to respect the wishes of President Lungu. In the same way, when you put up a will before you die, your lawyer is going to read it to your family, and they always ask that the wishes of the late should be respected as enshrined in that particular will. So even in this regard, President Lungu had wishes, and one of the wishes is that President Hakainde Hichilema should not come close to his body. And from Makebi Zulu's address, we hear that the family wasn't aware that the government had agreed that President Hakainde Hichilema will actually, be present at the memorial service or at Mulungushi International Conference Center. This is something that the family wasn't aware of, and this is why we're back to square one.
So, I don't know. Like you said, we are waiting for an update from the government.
We'll wait to hear from the
government. It will be done anytime soon, and we are hoping that they'll show us a clear roadmap in relation to how we move on forward from this time around. But in case you're just tuning in, this is Millennium TV, and we're giving you an update in relation to the latest developments of what is happening in South Africa. So, there were some photos, as I was telling you, there were some photos that were circulated to say the family was leaving for Lusaka from Johannesburg. But I don't know how true that one was, because Makebi Zulu just told us to say that the body won't be repatriated today back to Zambia. Yeah, so we really don't know what is going on.
From an anonymous source, what we were told is that the bags were packed, they were ready to take off, they were ready to return to Zambia until we don't know what happened. There was an emergency meeting that was called, and then the next thing that we heard was that they were going to be holding a briefing to update the nation on why. Actually, Ambassador Emmanuel Mwamba is the first person that went live on Facebook before everything. As we were all preparing to say we're going to the airport, Ambassador Emmanuel Mwamba was live and telling the nation that President Lungu's body will not be returning to Zambia today as scheduled. And I think I also received a message from somebody in the Patriotic Front, and they told me to say there's nothing happening at the airport as the body will not be coming in today. So when I was trying to confirm the news, I heard Ambassador Mwamba was live on Facebook. The next thing is I'm hearing, oh yes, actually there's going to be a press briefing in South Africa. Makebi Zulu is going to be addressing the nation, and here we are.
Definitely here we are, and obviously uncertainty is still rising and rising.
Right. You can see from Tasila Lungu that during that press briefing Makebi Zulu held that she was just crying. Indeed. And I think this puts even the family in a position where they want to put their father to rest, but they're just agreements that are not being met.
It clearly sets the tone of what discussions are being held in the back, because for me, when I looked at Tasila, I'm sure she wasn't happy with the new developments that are going on, and I'm sure she was talking to herself to say, you know what, this has taken long, and we just have to put that to rest. I wouldn't want anyone to do that
to my father.
You wouldn't?
I wouldn't. I feel like if I state that this is what we want for our father,
right,
I reckon that it should be respected and things should move accordingly, and not the way they're moving. I think I don't know what to say.
Really, you can run out of words, Lovisa, like seriously. But anyways, this is the latest update, and of course, like we said, in case you've got some, contribution to make or comments to make on this latest development, you can head on to our Facebook page, which is Millennium TV Zambia. You can also call the number that Lovisa just gave out, and of course, you can use the same number in relation to WhatsApp, in case you would love to let us know your concerns or comments on this latest development.
Right. We only have a few minutes before Ruben and I actually say our bye-byes, but we have there's a write-up from a Finger Member of Parliament, Robert Chabinga, as he went to sign ECL's Book of Condolences at Belvedere Lodge. I thought Chabinga was president of the Patriotic Front. Why is he going to Belvedere Lodge, not at the Patriotic Front Secretariat? Have you thought about it?
I've really thought about it several times, and he hasn't even told us why he's not going to the Secretariat.
Why is he not going to the Secretariat if he's the leader of the Patriotic Front? You know what I mean? What are you doing at Belvedere Lodge, Mr. Chabinga?
You know?
But anyways, let me just read his write-up. And I quote, today I had the solemn honor of signing the Book of Condolences at Belvedere Lodge, the official mourning place for our late 6th Republican President, His Excellency Mr. Edgar Chagwa Lungu. I was joined by my esteemed colleagues, Chama South Patriotic Front Member of Parliament, Honorable Davison Mungandu, and Musanzala Patriotic Front Member of Parliament, Honorable Elias Daka. It was a truly heartfelt and meaningful moment as we reflected on the profound contributions of a man who dedicated his life to the service and development of our beloved nation. President Lungu's legacy of unwavering commitment to Zambia will forever be etched in our hearts. As we navigate the period of national mourning, I call upon all Zambians to embrace peace, unity and respect. Let's honor our President Lungu's memory by upholding the values of harmony and understanding that he championed. Tomorrow, as we prepare to receive, this was actually yesterday, he's acting Patriotic Front president and leader of opposition. Why is he scared to go to the Patriotic Front secretariat if he's acting Patriotic Front president?
Maybe we should ask him that question.
We should have. We actually should get President Chavinga to tell us why he has failed to go to the Patriotic Front, which is the official mourning place for Patriotic Front members. We do have a call. Good afternoon. All right. We seem to have lost that call. The number is 0770813728. That is the number that you're dialing. As I've said, we have a few minutes before Ruben and I can wrap up this session of just giving you an update of what happened earlier today, an update that we received from South Africa. Makebi Zulu was addressing the nation earlier today and just telling us that the body of the former head of state will not be repatriated to Zambia this afternoon for around 14 hours when we're expected to receive his body because of certain restrictions that government has put up at the airport and other concerns, of course, raised in that address. Coming back to Honorable Chavinga, he's spoken about Honorable Davison Mungandu. I haven't seen Honorable Davison Mungandu in a very long time. The things that, we write about people when they die, Honorable Robert Chavinga had... what we were seeing now and what he had to say about President Lungu when he was still alive, totally different. Totally different. I don't know if we should actually believe what he has said or we should just respect the fact that we're in the mourning period. But, I think it's always very important to stay truthful to ourselves.
Exactly.
Yeah.
For me, I feel like you said, let's love one another whilst we're still alive. Let's not show love when someone is gone. I'm not saying that's what Robert Chavinga is doing, but looking at his message, simply,
of course,
there's a tone that is sitting there. He's telling us, that he's also, I believe that he is in mourning because obviously he's part of the PF. But like you said, the relationship between ECL and Robert Chavinga wasn't that good. Even the comments that were in public, it's in public domain.
Exactly.
We can find it almost everywhere, social media, everywhere.
Mr. Chavinga ridiculed President Lungu when he was still alive. So for him to say that he's a man who dedicated his life to serving the country, it comes as a shock to me. It comes as a shock to me and maybe others that read his comments.
Right.
Because I think when President Lungu passed, there were even people that were waiting to hear what Mr. Chavinga would say about President Lungu. So it comes as a shock to me to hear him say these nice words about a man that he ridiculed while he was still alive. So I think this is why the family of the late president is also at this position, because we looking at what President Lungu went through when he was still alive, being stopped from jogging because others deemed it as a campaign,
like a campaign stunt of some sort. But for me, I feel like there were a lot of restrictions on the former head of state. Like you can't stop someone from jogging. That's exercise.
Even just going to go outside the country to seek medical attention. Which is why President Lungu wished that he be buried privately, or everything about him should be treated privately, because he went in his own personal capacity to South Africa to seek medical attention, and that is why the family also wanted to bring him back home privately without the state being involved, and then the state takes over at the airport. But the rest of the activities and where the body lays in state should be at his Chifuema residence.
Yeah, but you know what? There were also some concerns from the government in relation to what was being put in public to say they were stopping ECL from going to SA. Even the time that he was in SA, there were, you know, some comments that were made by especially Mr. Raphael Nakachinda to say President Edgar Lungu is just resting in SA and he's perfectly fine. So obviously, maybe it actually pushed the government away in terms of them being concerned in relation to the health of ECL and everything. But at the end of the day, I feel like even if those comments came out, it was upon government to make sure that the former head of state is really either resting or being, you know, treated when it comes to medical treatment. For me, I feel like there was a lot that was going on.
I think when he left the country, the members of the Patriotic Front didn't just want to speak about the reasons for his travel. But prior to that, we were told that President Lungu wanted to go for his routine medical checkups. And we were informed that there was even a time that he was dragged out of a plane and stopped from traveling. And another time when he wrote to, I think, cabinet, and he was restricted from traveling. All right.
We lost that call. There was a bad line, but you can still try again. The number is on the screen. 07708137728 is the number that you are using in case you would love to come through and contribute on what we are analyzing in relation to the latest developments in relation to ECL's repatriation. Of course, a lot of people were expecting his body to land in Zambia at 14 hours as it was announced. But unfortunately, that won't be the case, Lovisa.
Right. Due to time, Ruben, I think we'll be ending our conversation here this afternoon. We have the Millennium TV Lunchtime News coming up after this analysis. My name is Lovisa Chilufia.
And my name is Ruben Mwanza. Thank you so much for watching. Do stay tuned to Millennium TV. We have the main news coming up shortly.
Thank you for watching.
Tell me when you're ready. Oh, you're ready to go. That sign you're doing must be done appropriately. Don't do it at wrong places.
leadership that is here, the presidents that are here. You are most welcome. The acting president will speak. If there be any other person speaking, the acting president will guide us. Mr. President.
Thank you. Welcome, members of the press, to this solemn press briefing. This press briefing is called to update members of the public on our preparedness for the reception of the remains of our dear departed President, Edgar Chagwa. As the public has already been informed, the aeroplane bringing the body of President Edgar Chagwa would depart Lanseria Airport in the Republic of South Africa at 12:45 and is expected to land at Kenneth Kaunda International Airport tomorrow. In readiness for that, we in the Tonse Alliance have the following statements to make. We are cognizant of the fact that the decision to bring the body tomorrow was arrived at after the family agreed with the government of Zambia on a number of conditions, which were announced in a joint press briefing addressed by the family through their family representative, Council Makebi Zulu, and the government, represented by Secretary Cabinet Patrick Kangwa. Those conditions that were announced are conditions that we in the Tonse Alliance will insist on being fulfilled. Namely, that a private jet, a private aircraft, a private chartered aircraft, chartered by friends of Edgar Chagwa is the one that will transport the remains. We will therefore be on standby at Kenneth Kaunda International Airport to ensure that that has been done. Secondly, we are aware that the second condition was that the remains of Dr. Edgar Chagwa will be in the possession of the family starting tomorrow on arrival until the day when the remains are put to rest on Monday. We in the Tonse Alliance have therefore resolved that tomorrow we, all of us, will be at the reception of the remains of Dr. Edgar Chagwa. And we shall stand by in support of the family to ensure that no one and no one but the family have access to and possession of the body right from the airport until it arrives at the residence of the Lungu family in Chifwema. Any attempt by any entity to access the body shall be met with resistance from we members of the Tonse Alliance.